Imagine a world where every father, every male guardian, every male mentor disappears in a single instant, not through death, but simply erased from existence. The ripple effects would be profound, touching every society, culture, and individual life. Fathers provide more than financial or practical support. They shape emotional stability, moral development, and social cohesion. In Judaism, the role of the father is intertwined with guiding moral and spiritual life. The Torah emphasizes the father as the teacher and protector of his family. In Christianity, the paternal figure reflects God's guidance and care, while in Hinduism, fathers serve as dharmic protectors, upholding moral order and transmitting tradition. Literary works like To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee reveal the subtle but profound ways a father influences empathy, justice, and integrity. Philosophers from Aristotle to Kant have highlighted the ethical formation that fathers contribute to the family unit. Without them, the foundational architecture of society wavers. How would children learn discipline, courage, and responsibility? Who would embody the ideals of protection, moral guidance, and emotional support? The absence of fathers is not merely a demographic concern, it is a collapse of social scaffolding, emotional inheritance, and cultural continuity. Imagine the quiet lessons lost, disciplined encouragement, loving presence, and moral modeling suddenly gone. Male figures often symbolize order, courage, and moral clarity. Their sudden absence leaves humanity bereft of models for decision-making, resilience, and accountability. Today, we reflect not only on what fathers do, but on what humanity loses when they are gone. Communities, schools, and families would feel the absence in ways both tangible and unseen. Fathers contribute to traditions, mentorship, and leadership, and without them, those structures weaken. Emotional development, identity formation, and socialization are disrupted across generations. In philosophy, literature, and religion, the father's role is central to transmitting wisdom, virtue, and ethical reasoning. The void left by absent fathers is multifaceted, encompassing emotional, social, and moral dimensions. It is not only children who are affected. Society as a whole would face instability, vulnerability, and ethical fragmentation. Fathers ground us in continuity, responsibility, and relational guidance. To envision a world without them is to confront the precariousness of human civilization itself. This is not simply a question about absence, it is a meditation on the collapse of social and moral ecosystems. Fathers are anchors for many individuals, shaping identity through example, dialogue, and protection. Psychologist Michael Lamb emphasizes that father involvement directly impacts children's emotional regulation, cognitive development, and social success. Without fathers, children may struggle to internalize models of responsibility, courage, and constructive risk-taking. Philosophically, John Locke argued that education is a partnership between parent and child. Without one half, the balance of learning is lost. Literature frequently explores fatherless figures to reveal societal fractures, from Shakespeare's Hamlet to Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn. Religion reinforces the moral necessity of male guidance. Confucianism stresses filial piety, emphasizing reciprocal obligations between father and child as fundamental to social harmony. The absence of fathers would amplify vulnerabilities in adolescence, moral formation, and community participation. Male absence destabilizes societal rituals of initiation, mentorship, and leadership. The psychological void left by missing fathers is not easily filled. Children might seek substitutes in peers, technology, or institutions, yet the nuanced wisdom and authority of fathers is irreplaceable. The absence of fathers would not just be felt in homes. Schools, workplaces, and communities would face generational gaps in resilience, responsibility, and ethical decision-making. Literature, philosophy, and religion collectively teach that male figures serve as mediators between chaos and order. To imagine their absence is to confront a society suddenly deprived of one axis of stability. Every day, fathers provide small yet critical lessons in patience, discipline, courage, and empathy. They model how to balance authority with care, ambition with morality, and independence with loyalty. Their absence removes benchmarks for navigating relationships, conflict, and life's uncertainties. Philosophers argue that virtue is learned relationally. Without fathers, relational scaffolding disappears. Communities may experience fragmentation, and ethical reasoning risks erosion. Emotional guidance, moral leadership, and social continuity, these pillars are heavily reliant on male presence. Imagining a world without fathers forces us to reckon with how deeply interwoven they are into every aspect of human development. The emotional consequences of a world without fathers ripple across every generation. Boys and girls alike confront a lack of role models for emotional regulation, discipline, and resilience. Developmental psychology shows that father absence correlates with increased anxiety, depression, and social difficulties. In Raising Cain, Dan Kindlon and Michael Thompson illustrate how boys especially need engaged male figures to navigate emotional development and societal expectations. Beyond childhood, adult men may struggle with identity formation, while women may lose partners, mentors, and stabilizing figures. Religious traditions reinforce the psychological importance of fathers. In Islam, the father is the head of family life, providing guidance and spiritual grounding. In Christianity, fathers model virtue and moral rectitude. In Hinduism, fathers embody dharma and societal responsibility. Philosophers such as Aristotle highlight the father as a moral guide and educator, shaping ethical character and social cohesion. Literary portrayals, from Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov to Morrison's Song of Solomon, explore the void left by absent fathers, emphasizing emotional turbulence, fractured identity, and social alienation. The absence of fathers creates a vacuum in mentorship, moral teaching, and emotional scaffolding, leaving society fragile. Communities may experience increased disorientation, moral ambiguity, and diminished collective empathy. Individuals might seek surrogate paternal figures, but the original bond, with its combination of authority, protection, and unconditional support, is unique. Fathers provide a template for navigating challenges, balancing love with discipline, and nurturing resilience. Without them, emotional development becomes inconsistent, leaving gaps in confidence, ambition, and ethical judgment. The psychological impact extends beyond children. Adults may face difficulties forming stable relationships, managing stress, or cultivating self-discipline. Literature, philosophy, and religion converge in showing that fathers are central to emotional and moral ecosystems. Societies without fathers risk heightened anxiety, fractured communities, and weakened ethical frameworks. Emotional literacy, resilience, and identity formation are all dependent on the consistent presence of paternal guidance. Without it, society faces not only individual trauma, but generational instability. The absence of fathers disrupts not just families, but the social fabric at large. Fathers contribute to community structures, governance, and mentorship networks. In tribal societies, elders and male figures maintain traditions, resolve disputes, and guide youth. Without men, cultural transmission becomes fractured, and rituals of passage, apprenticeship, and socialization lose critical anchors. Literature reflects this phenomenon. Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart portrays how the absence or loss of male authority destabilizes society, showing that leadership vacuums ripple through communities. Philosophically, Confucius emphasized that personal relationships form the foundation of social harmony. When the father-child bond is severed, the moral and social order is compromised. Religions frame fathers as pillars of morality and guidance. In Judaism, fathers transmit religious law. In Islam, they enforce ethical behavior. In Christianity, they embody stewardship and care. Fathers often serve as mediators in conflicts, protectors of resources, and models of ethical decision-making. Without fathers, communities risk moral relativism, fragmented mentorship, and weakened institutional trust. Social cohesion, cooperation, and cultural memory rely heavily on the visible and invisible presence of male leadership. Art, literature, and media also reveal the consequences of fatherless societies. Crime rates rise, mentorship diminishes, and ethical role modeling declines. These patterns underscore the integral role fathers play in societal continuity, highlighting the deep interdependence between private family life and public social structures. Communities without male guidance may struggle to preserve cultural identity, transmit traditions, or cultivate civic responsibility. Fathers influence the transmission of knowledge, wisdom, and social norms. Their absence reverberates through politics, education, and daily community life. Philosophers argue that stable societies depend on relational mentorship, ethical exemplars, and moral modeling, all of which fathers traditionally provide. Literature, mythology, and sociology consistently illustrate how fatherlessness destabilizes communal integrity, leaving society vulnerable to fragmentation and moral ambiguity. Without fathers, the moral compass of society suffers. Fathers model responsibility, courage, and ethical reasoning. Aristotle argued that moral virtues are learned through habituation and example, with the father central to this formation. John Locke emphasized the father's role in educating children on virtue, civic duty, and societal obligations. Religious texts reinforce this principle. The Bible depicts fathers as moral guides, the Quran envisions fathers as protectors and educators, and Hindu texts describe fathers as custodians of Dharma. Fathers mediate justice within families, guiding fairness, resolving conflicts, and modeling accountability. Literature often explores the consequences of absent moral authorities. In Hamlet, the loss of a father triggers chaos, vengeance, and existential questioning. A generation without paternal guidance may struggle to internalize principles of fairness, justice, and duty. Communities could experience increased antisocial behavior, moral ambiguity, and a diminished sense of accountability. Fathers transmit cultural norms, ethical reasoning, and social responsibility. Their absence leaves these lessons incomplete, and society might rely on peers or institutions ill-equipped to replicate paternal influence. Emotional stability and ethical integrity are intertwined, and the absence of male guidance risks unraveling both. Philosophers assert that morality is relational. Without fathers, the relational scaffolding for ethical development collapses. The moral void affects communities, schools, workplaces, and families, with long-term implications for justice, empathy, and civic responsibility. Fathers model courage, fairness, and ethical reasoning in ways that institutions cannot fully replicate. Their disappearance leaves society vulnerable to moral drift and ethical uncertainty. Literature, philosophy, and religious traditions consistently illustrate the indispensable role of fathers in moral formation. Fathers are central to cultivating conscience, character, and ethical frameworks that support flourishing individuals and stable societies. Fathers are critical in shaping emotional resilience and identity in their children. Children with engaged fathers often exhibit higher self-esteem, better social skills, and stronger problem-solving abilities. The absence of a father can create gaps in understanding masculinity, responsibility, and relational dynamics. Literature, from the brothers Karamazov to Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon, shows fatherless characters navigating confusion, anger, and moral ambiguity. Fathers provide guidance in ethical reasoning, conflict resolution, and emotional regulation, modeling behavior children emulate into adulthood. Religions emphasize fathers' roles. In Judaism, fathers teach ethical conduct and law. In Christianity, they model moral and spiritual virtue. In Hinduism, they transmit dharmic principles. Philosophers like John Locke and Aristotle argue that moral and emotional education cannot occur in isolation and requires guidance from both parents. Without fathers, children may over-rely on peers, media, or institutions for moral and emotional cues, leading to gaps in maturity and resilience. Boys may struggle to understand healthy masculinity, while girls may lack male figures for protection and guidance. Fathers often balance nurturance with discipline, teaching responsibility through consistent presence and example. Their absence leaves children feeling unanchored, uncertain of how to navigate relationships, social expectations, and personal challenges. Literature and mythology illustrate that absent fathers often trigger quests, trials, or moral reckonings, emphasizing their role in shaping identity. Emotional literacy, empathy, and resilience are affected, leaving society vulnerable to instability. Fathers also help children process grief, setbacks, and success, providing frameworks for coping and growth. Their disappearance alters attachment, trust, and autonomy, affecting long-term personal development. A society without fathers risks generations struggling to integrate identity, responsibility, and social connection. Fathers often act as the first mentors, guiding children through personal, moral, and societal challenges. Their absence disrupts the transmission of knowledge, tradition, and ethical norms. In literature, To Kill a Mockingbird shows Atticus Finch shaping his children's sense of justice and moral reasoning, highlighting the nuanced mentorship fathers provide. Philosophers like Confucius emphasized the importance of passing down wisdom and cultivating virtue. The father is often the primary vessel for this transfer. Fathers model problem-solving, conflict resolution, and leadership through everyday interactions, offering lessons that cannot be fully replicated in classrooms or through technology. Religious traditions underscore fathers as societal anchors. In Islam, they are moral guides. In Christianity, they are stewards of virtue. In Hinduism, they uphold dharmic responsibility. Mentorship from fathers allows children to navigate challenges with foresight, accountability, and ethical reasoning. Without fathers, communities lose intergenerational guidance that fosters resilience, ethical judgment, and civic responsibility. Boys may struggle to develop confidence and moral clarity without male role models, while girls may lose protective and guiding influences. Fathers also teach practical life skills, emotional regulation, and long-term planning, bridging the gap between theory and lived experience. The absence of paternal mentorship creates a void in socialization, leaving children vulnerable to peer pressure, moral confusion, and impulsive decision-making. Literature, philosophy, and psychology consistently show that fatherless societies face leadership challenges, moral drift, and diminished ethical frameworks. Fathers are symbolic of societal order, reinforcing norms, values, and intergenerational knowledge. Without them, societies risk instability, weakened social bonds, and a loss of continuity across generations. The subtle lessons fathers impart, the guidance of choices, demonstration of courage, and modeling of responsibility, cannot be fully replaced by institutions or technology. Fathers historically provide economic stability, resource allocation, and practical support for families. Their absence creates gaps in security, opportunity, and daily logistics. Beyond financial contribution, fathers model responsibility, work ethic, and long-term planning, all essential for the survival and growth of families and communities. In literature, fatherless characters often confront survival struggles, as seen in Twain's Huckleberry Finn. Philosophers such as Aristotle emphasize the father's role in household management and societal contribution. Religious traditions highlight fathers as providers. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all emphasize the father's duty to protect, support, and guide the household. Practical knowledge, from trade and career guidance to problem solving, often flows from fathers to children. Without paternal guidance, communities may face economic instability and diminished skill inheritance. Fathers teach decision-making, prioritization, and long-term thinking, forming the backbone of practical life skills. Their absence increases reliance on external institutions, peers, or technology for guidance. Male presence shapes family routines, instills discipline, and models accountability, leaving voids in both practical and moral infrastructure when absent. Literature and cultural narratives reinforce fathers as both practical and moral anchors. A society without fathers risks compounded challenges, financial instability, lack of mentorship, and decreased resilience. The economic and practical vacuum left by absent fathers also affects social cohesion and intergenerational continuity. Fathers contribute to both material and emotional infrastructure. Their disappearance leaves society structurally and culturally weakened. The lessons fathers impart, planning, resourcefulness, and responsibility, remain critical for survival, ethics, and community cohesion. Fatherlessness affects not only individual children, but also the transmission of culture, wisdom, and ethical frameworks across generations. Fathers serve as conduits of knowledge, teaching societal norms, moral reasoning, and life skills. Without fathers, these lessons are fragmented or lost, leaving gaps in cultural and ethical continuity. Literature illustrates generational consequences. Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov depicts the ethical and emotional turmoil of children growing up without paternal guidance. Philosophers from Aristotle to Kant emphasized that moral education is relational and dependent on active parental guidance, highlighting the pivotal role fathers play in intergenerational learning. Religions underscore the father's role in maintaining lineage, rituals, and ethical instruction across Judaism, Christianity, and Hinduism. Male absence breaks chains of knowledge, weakening intergenerational continuity. Adolescents may struggle to develop resilience, responsibility, and practical problem-solving without paternal input. Communities lose stabilizing influence, ethical guidance, and cultural memory. Fathers provide context, perspective, and historical understanding that informs identity and social participation. Literature and mythology show that fatherless societies face moral, emotional, and social challenges, with children over-relying on peers, media, or institutions to fill the void. Emotional, social, and moral development are intertwined, and fathers are central to integrating these aspects. Generational gaps widen when paternal knowledge is absent, weakening societal cohesion and cultural transmission. The absence of fathers disrupts not only immediate families, but entire communities, leaving societies vulnerable to ethical ambiguity, social instability, and fragmented cultural heritage. Fathers ensure that values, traditions, and moral lessons are passed down, creating continuity in identity, behavior, and social responsibility across generations. Fathers are essential models of masculinity, teaching young men how to navigate society with responsibility, empathy, and ethical reasoning. Without them, male identity formation becomes fragmented, leaving boys without a blueprint for healthy adulthood. Psychologists note increased risk-taking, aggression, and social confusion in fatherless boys. Literature, from Iron John by Robert Bly to Morrison's works, demonstrates the importance of male initiation, mentorship, and relational modeling. Fathers teach courage, accountability, self-control, and moral reasoning through example, embedding lessons that cannot be replaced by peers, institutions, or technology. Philosophers emphasize the relational nature of ethical and emotional education. Without fathers, sons lack relational benchmarks for behavior, decision-making, and social navigation. Religions provide structured guidance for male development. Islam stresses responsibility, Judaism emphasizes ethical mentorship, and Hinduism focuses on dharmic duty. Fathers also play an essential role for daughters, providing protective guidance and ethical modeling that shapes relational expectations. Male mentorship outside the family can help, but rarely replicates the relational depth of a father-child bond. Identity, moral judgment, and relational skills are all profoundly shaped by fathers. The absence of male guidance destabilizes socialization, emotional growth, and ethical formation. Societies without fathers may see fractured communities, weakened intergenerational continuity, and diminished ethical frameworks. Fathers anchor culture, virtue, and identity, offering stability and mentorship that extend far beyond the household. Literature, philosophy, psychology, and religious texts converge in showing that fathers provide indispensable guidance for individual and societal flourishing. Fathers often act as spiritual leaders, guiding children in ethical reasoning, ritual practice, and moral responsibility. In Judaism, fathers teach prayers and interpret Torah lessons, providing a structured moral framework. Christianity emphasizes fathers as stewards of virtue and guides in family faith, while Hinduism frames fathers as dharmic anchors, ensuring the transmission of spiritual and cultural practices. Without fathers, spiritual education is disrupted, leaving children without role models for morality, ritual, and ethical living. Philosophers such as Cicero and Aquinas stress the family as central to moral instruction. Absent fathers, children lose relational moral guidance that shapes ethical understanding. Literature often depicts fatherless characters grappling with existential, ethical, and spiritual dilemmas, showing the multifaceted impact of male absence. Fathers provide scaffolding for character development and spiritual growth, and their absence can fragment rituals, moral lessons, and religious observances. Male absence destabilizes moral, ethical, and spiritual continuity across generations. Communities must scramble to replace paternal guidance, but relational depth is lost, and ethical or spiritual education suffers. Fathers embody principles that are difficult to replicate institutionally. Ethical frameworks, spiritual engagement, and social responsibility all decline without them. Fatherlessness affects both individual growth and the moral integrity of society. Fathers provide relational glue for ethical and spiritual cohesion, forming foundations that guide children into adulthood. Their absence is felt in moral confusion, disrupted rites of passage, and weakened cultural continuity. Philosophers, literature, and religious traditions collectively emphasize the critical role fathers play in shaping human morality and spiritual identity. Literature provides deep insight into the importance of fathers. In To Kill a Mockingbird, Atticus Finch serves as a moral compass, shaping his children's understanding of justice and integrity. Twain's Huckleberry Finn illustrates the challenges boys face when paternal guidance is absent, emphasizing survival, moral growth, and self-discovery. Dostoevsky's The Brothers. Karamazov explores the ethical and emotional turmoil that arises in children without paternal oversight. Fathers serve as repositories of cultural memory, transmitting values, ethical reasoning, and social knowledge across generations. Philosophers including Aristotle and Locke argue that moral and civic education requires guidance and example, not just abstract instruction. Religious traditions across the globe reinforce this view. In Judaism, fathers pass down law and ritual. In Christianity, they model virtue and stewardship. In Hinduism, they teach dharmic duty and family ethics. Fathers influence art, storytelling, and cultural narratives, shaping the imagination and moral consciousness of their children. Without them, literature, music, and cultural practices lose nuance, depth, and continuity. The absence of fathers diminishes collective memory and erodes frameworks for understanding identity, responsibility, and ethical reasoning. Societies without fathers risk fragmenting cultural heritage, leaving individuals less grounded in shared values and moral wisdom. Mythology and folklore across civilizations consistently portray absent fathers as catalysts for quests, growth, or societal upheaval, underscoring the universal recognition of paternal influence. Fathers also act as anchors in times of social, political, or familial instability, providing a sense of continuity and structure. Without them, stories of heroism, morality, and resilience become fractured. The cultural, literary, and ethical void left by absent fathers is profound, touching every layer of human experience. Literature, philosophy, and religion collectively highlight the indispensable role of fathers in sustaining ethical, cultural, and social continuity. The sudden absence of fathers creates profound psychological consequences for children and society. Research shows that fatherless children are more likely to experience anxiety, depression, and behavioral challenges. Boys may struggle with identity, aggression, and impulse control, while girls may lack male role models and protection. Fathers provide emotional scaffolding, teaching empathy, patience, and coping strategies through lived example. Literature illustrates these effects. Fatherless characters often confront moral dilemmas, insecurity, and social isolation, highlighting the depth of paternal influence. Philosophers emphasize that moral development and ethical reasoning rely on relational experiences. Absent fathers, children miss critical modeling for decision-making, accountability, and social responsibility. Religious traditions underscore this stabilizing influence. Islam encourages fathers to instill discipline and morality, Jewish traditions emphasize ethical education, and Hindu texts stress dharmic mentorship. Fathers help mediate social norms, reinforce boundaries, and model accountability. Without them, society experiences elevated social instability, weakened community cohesion, and diminished intergenerational trust. Children may seek guidance from peers, media, or technology, which rarely provide relational depth. Emotional voids affect self-regulation, decision-making, and the ability to form healthy relationships. Societies without fathers risk higher rates of social fragmentation, criminality, and moral uncertainty. Fathers also model resilience in adversity, helping children navigate challenges with ethical and practical insight. Literature, philosophy, and psychology consistently underscore the long-term consequences of fatherlessness for personal and societal well-being. A world without fathers produces adults less prepared for emotional challenges, moral complexity, and leadership responsibilities. The absence of male guidance leaves society with gaps in mentoring, ethical reasoning, and relational intelligence, ultimately affecting the moral and emotional fabric of communities. In a world without fathers, technology may attempt to fill the void. AI tutors, robotic caregivers, and virtual mentors could provide instruction and practical guidance, but they cannot replicate relational depth, emotional nuance, or moral example. Fathers teach ethical reasoning, emotional regulation, and moral judgment through lived experience, qualities that cannot be coded into algorithms or replicated digitally. Literature and philosophy warn against substituting human relationships with machines. Twain's Huckleberry Finn and Dostoevsky's works illustrate the irreplaceable relational context of paternal guidance. Religious traditions reinforce relational learning. Fathers transmit spiritual and ethical values that technology cannot emulate. While technological substitutes may be efficient, they lack intuition, empathy, moral judgment, and the nuanced scaffolding fathers provide. Children may receive instructions but not relational understanding, practical wisdom, or moral context. The absence of paternal modeling risks creating adults skilled at tasks but deficient in ethical judgment, empathy, and emotional resilience. Aristotle emphasized that virtue is cultivated through relationships and practice, not abstract instruction. Literature, cultural narratives, and religious teachings converge on the principle that fathers are irreplaceable guides. Societies over-relying on technology risk moral flattening, ethical gaps, and diminished human connection. The ethical and emotional consequences of a fatherless, AI-driven world are profound and largely irreversible. Without fathers, relational wisdom, mentorship, and moral formation are replaced by sterile instruction, leaving society morally and emotionally incomplete. Fathers provide the relational, cultural, and ethical context essential to human development, which technology cannot replicate. These resources offer comprehensive insight into fatherhood, men's roles in society, and the profound impact of paternal involvement. The Way of Boys by Anthony Rao explores male development and the psychological significance of fathers. Raising Cain by Dan Kindlon and Michael Thompson examines boys' emotional growth and fathers' critical influence on empathy, responsibility, and resilience. Iron John by Robert Bly uses myth, literature, and cultural history to reveal the archetypal role of men, providing a lens into modern masculinity. The Father Factor by Stephan Poulter emphasizes fathers' influence on children's moral and emotional growth while providing practical strategies for engaged parenting. Fatherneed by Pruett highlights the importance of father care alongside maternal care, showing its effects on emotional security and social development. The Role of the Father in Child Development by Michael E. Lamb offers research-based analysis on paternal involvement across multiple developmental outcomes. Podcasts like The Art of Manliness provide actionable guidance on ethics, life skills, and personal growth, while the Modern Dads podcast shares contemporary fatherhood experiences and lessons. Websites such as fatherhood.org give research, community support, and educational materials, helping fathers and families access guidance grounded in evidence and best practices. Together, these books, podcasts, and websites illustrate the multifaceted ways fathers contribute to children, families, and society. They emphasize that fathers' absence leaves profound emotional, social, and moral gaps. Exploring these resources offers viewers psychological, cultural, literary, and practical perspectives on men's roles and the consequences of their absence, aligning with the philosophical, literary, and religious themes highlighted throughout this inquiry. This thought experiment underscores the indispensable role of fathers in human development. Their absence leaves emotional, moral, social, and cultural gaps that ripple across generations. Fathers guide, nurture, and model behavior, shaping resilience, responsibility, and ethical judgment. Philosophy, literature, and religion consistently affirm the significance of male mentorship, emphasizing their contributions to both personal and societal well-being. Communities, children, and society at large rely on fathers' presence for balance, stability, and moral grounding. Without fathers, society becomes fragmented, emotionally fragile, and morally disoriented. Fathers contribute to identity formation, emotional intelligence, cultural continuity, and civic responsibility. They provide guidance, protection, and mentorship that shapes generations and ensures social cohesion. Literature, from Shakespeare to Toni Morrison, illustrates the dramatic consequences of absent fathers, revealing the emotional turbulence and identity challenges that can emerge. Religious traditions teach ethical and spiritual guidance through paternal figures, reinforcing the moral and cultural scaffolding fathers provide. Philosophers highlight mentorship and relational teaching as central to moral and civic development, underscoring the long-term impact of fatherly presence. Fathers cultivate courage, resilience, empathy, and accountability, nurturing qualities that extend far beyond the household into communities and societies. Their influence helps children navigate adversity, ethical dilemmas, and social complexities. The absence of fathers threatens not only individual development, but also the broader ethical, emotional, and cultural fabric of society. This reflection invites viewers to consider the profound ways men sustain, nurture, and guide humanity. Fathers are not merely providers, they are anchors of moral, emotional, and social development. Recognizing their impact illuminates the invisible structures that support families, communities, and cultural continuity. A world without fathers is incomplete, vulnerable, and ethically diminished. By exploring literature, philosophy, psychology, and religion, we see that fathers play a unique and irreplaceable role in shaping human identity, guiding ethical reasoning, and fostering emotional resilience. Their presence ensures continuity, stability, and mentorship across generations, bridging the past, present, and future. Understanding fatherhood in this holistic way highlights men's essential contributions to the human condition and emphasizes the urgent need to value, support, and engage fathers in every aspect of life.